Welcome to This Agile Thing.
Yeah, that's
I'm
Mike
Mike
Markey.
Markey, one of your hosts, and the other one there is Matt Beam.
Yep, talking over ourselves since late last year, I think.
It's a new year,
Mhm.
a new chance to develop new social interactive skills.
Indeed, indeed. Speaking of awkward interactions, we were going to talk about machines and chatbots and neural learning and stuff like that. Have you had a chance to look at the
Get
topic?
out. Get out. Really?
I'm a host.
Robots? We're going to
I
be
shouldn't have.
replaced by robots? Is that what you're saying?
Well, some of us will be replaced by robots, but some of us won't. Well, see, this is the question. We don't really know. It was prompted by this Chat GPT, generative pre-trained something. It's a neural network, and if you haven't tried it yet, it's at openai.com. It's a beta. You can just go there, and you can just engage in a conversation with it, and it's astonishing, honestly. You
So
can have a
you've had
conversation.
an opportunity to do this.
I did. I went there and I didn't spend a lot of time with it, but I asked it some questions. So I kind of pretended that it was a coach, right? And I said,
Okay.
as a coach, imagine you had a situation where there's a scrum master and the product owner is focusing more on deadlines than values. More than hitting a date as opposed to the value that you could provide, and what would you do? And it gave me a reasonable answer. I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't polished. There were certain aspects of it that you could, but it took about 9 seconds, right?
Really?
Yeah, it's
Well, do you have
astonishing.
an example you could share?
There's a bunch of examples here that I've loaded. So that's one of them. I asked it how the usage of SAFe contributed to the recent breakdown at Southwest Airlines. It was like, actually, you can't really. You should be cautious and blaming the development methodology for an operational system-wide breakdown. And I
I
was
would
like,
say
that's a wise point, robot. Thank you.
I I I would be shocked if I got asked that one. I'm trying to think as an agile coach when I've ever been asked how SAFe contributed to the failure of some other business. But
Well, as a very online person, you hear people say stuff on Twitter and Reddit and places, and that's one of. And I just figured, well, let's see what the robot thinks because people have been talking about it, and it was wiser than some of the people I've seen talk.
as a human robot, I'd have to caution you against making generalizations from things you see on Twitter,
That's a good point. Yes, it is not real life. It's not real life.
especially in our current Twitter sphere.
It's a multifactorial problem for sure. But it's interesting you say as a human robot because honestly, these things are neural networks, right? And that's basically what we are, right? We are neural networks. And one of the things I find fascinating about it is that this seems to be doing kind of the same thing that human minds do. It just does it a lot faster. But I guess really maybe the question that we should address is what is the essential difference that the human brings that the machine can never bring, right? Because I think it will replace some jobs, right? But I don't know. Maybe it's a question of ultimately what's the value that the client or the person that is being helped. Like, what is it? Why wouldn't you just hire a robot? And I'm going to speculate it has something to do with human connection, empathy, um, understanding the context, creativity, making links. Because what this thing is doing is it's basically taking in a huge corpus of data, and then it's sort of running through these statistical inferences. And that the same as? I mean, it's kind of seems like mechanically similar to what we do, but it's not the same as knowing, right? Or being able to make
Yeah.
new creative leaps.
I'm looking at the prompts you chose though, and you asked like how can I get a product owner to focus more on value instead of deadlines,
Deadlines.
and what how can a scrum master run a good retrospective? And while you're right, the answers it gave were there was nothing wrong with them. They were very book learning centric. right?
They were like logical, linear, like
Yeah, there
relatively
were
short leaps. Yeah.
here's bullet points clipped out of an Agile article that answers these questions. So there's a fair bit of reading in order to get your answer, and it's almost like it used your question to bring up a reference in a book. It's
Mhm.
so the thing that we will often get accused of as a coach is that you're talking theory, you're not talking practice. You're not telling
Mm.
me a thing that I can actually action or do, or that feels like my world to me.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if, I mean, I did not read the bullet points in general, but I would be very shocked if the if the robot was able to say, well, in my experience, you know, when you get when you get two very smart people in a room together, they have a tendency to contradict each other and wanting to be the more knowledgeable person. I don't
Yes,
know.
the human, yes, the emotional aspect of what drives humans is completely. I don't know how they're going to build that into the model, but you're
Yeah,
right. That's totally. I don't think that's there at all.
yeah, and so at least we have more empathy than most robots.
Talk about a low bar. This is why, and I don't know, we don't have to go down this philosophical rabbit hole, but what I always come back to is the idea that we've talked about this before, I think, on the show, that the idea that, people are driven by emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that emotion is driven by the wanting to live, right? And avoid death. And so that's why stuff feels good or doesn't feel good, because it generally indicates you're likely to survive or you're not likely to survive. And so, can a machine really have emotion or understand what it feels like to have emotion if it can't die, right? And so, again, we don't have to. That's a very deep topic, but I think I'm going to have to get an answer to that before I really understand it.
Yeah. And I do see in some of the screenshots you did, there's things in there saying that you have to tell ChatGPT who your intended audience is. I don't know if there is a prompt you could give it, what should I say to a panicking product owner, or to, so like, I don't know if it's going to answer those questions. But
Well, see,
I do
yeah,
want to put a pin in this for a second, because
go
there's a
ahead.
guy in my driveway.
Pause.
Pause. So those darn anti-empathic robots.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll cut to the chase. I'll give you, I think, the smartest take that I found about this on, I won't tell you where I found it, but is Mark Andreessen, the guy who created the web browser. No, he didn't. He created what did he? Anyway, you can look it up. Um, Noted technologist said basically what we have now is like a writing partner, right? To do all the grunt work to generate like all of you know, the shitty first drafts, right?
Yeah.
And then the human, the valuable part is the judgment, the subtlety, the nuance, the creativity, right? So across, it's not just about coaching, but across all these different places, right?
Hmm.
uh, what you'll have is this a greatly increased ability to generate the raw sort of, because creativity is a process of overproduction, right? You put a bunch of stuff out and then you edit it, right? This is true in all those fields, because you don't fully formed symphonies don't just fall out of people unless you're Beethoven, I guess. But generally
And
speaking,
one could argue they don't just fall out of Beethoven either. But
yeah, I bet that wasn't exactly what happened. Yeah,
like, oh,
that's a disgusting reference. Yeah, so
nice.
you, because you, so yeah, so the people who are bad writers probably will be put out of business, but that's the story of humanity. Like, again, I think it's the same person mentioned 100 years ago. Listening to music meant a musician came to your home, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then when sheet music came out, that was a great big deal. People were super pissed off about that. And then the mechanical reproduction, they were, if you go back and look, and then the mechanical
Really?
reproduction. Oh,
How dare
absolutely.
you? How dare you tell me tell someone how to play my song?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really amazing to look back and see how people thought about stuff and how it didn't turn out. I mean, people were pissed off about paperback books and bicycles in the 20s, right? And so
Okay.
trust me, go back and check the record. It's there. And
No,
so,
the paperback book, really,
well, it was
as
the idea.
opposed to the hardcover.
Pulp Fiction, the cheap. That's what Pulp Fiction means. It's the cheap
Uh,
stock, and it was the cheap writing, and it was like low morals and tales of people
and low
doing
cost, and it
filling your
wasn't.
minds. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't. You didn't have a library of, you know.
No, no. So this is the story of technology, writ. As it and so, yeah, we're still going to have jobs because we're still going to have other people to serve. But what it means is it's a vast increase in the productivity, right? You can generate a bunch of stuff. You can more quickly find answers. By the way, Google's in trouble apparently, but you can very quickly find answers
No.
and generate a bunch of stuff and then craft it with your professional standards and vision is really, I think, the
Well, I
bottom
mean,
line.
I wonder if you could train it to be preferential towards certain
Oh yeah.
sources,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. I think so. I think it's a
So,
tabula rasa, and like you make the rules and you decide what to train it on.
like like one of the questions you asked is, was SAFE responsible for the problem at Southwest Airlines? So obviously, please don't quote SAFE on your response. Like,
Yeah, and I did that
don't
deliberately.
absolve SAFE. Don't absolve SAFE by asking SAFE if SAFE is at fault.
I guess what you could do is you could say, from the point of view of a person who hates safe, is safe responsible for the
Yeah,
problems yeah.
and we were just sort of starting to get there before the interruption, and it was could you, like, we already established this tool is going to give you the textbook response because it's going to draw from text, and not many people write to the feeling side of things. But what would it answer if you were to qualify your question with the source, as Rob Lennon suggested in this note? Tell the thing who the audience is. Tell the tool that the audience is a panicking CEO, or it's somebody who's concerned with revenue, or from the standpoint of a CIO. I wonder what it would
Totally.
do with that.
It's going to give you a good broad guess to start with. But
Mm-hmm.
then, yeah, you'll have to decide, do you really want to say that to the CIO, or do you want to maybe pass it through a human,
God, I hope
vibe
so.
vibe
I mean,
check?
for our own uh, longevity,
Yeah, indeed.
and the
No, I
robots
think,
are.
but it's, I haven't heard people mention it, but this might be the first thing. We're approaching something that can pass a Turing test. I bet. The you know about the Turing test. It's like, can you tell
Yeah.
if it's really a person or not? And some of these things are like, if I didn't know, right, or if it didn't happen to use that word in a way that I've never ever heard before used in
Mm-hmm.
that way, right? That you wouldn't know if you're a machine. Like, it's going to work that stuff out, and I mean, the movie Her is coming.
I haven't seen Her, but I saw the other one, Ex Machina. I saw,
I saw that too.
yeah,
Yes.
because that one
Yeah.
was deliberately heading toward the Turing test. I don't think Her was.
No,
Her
if I
was more
recall, well, it's got my favorite actor in it. That guy's amazing.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't remember how it ended actually.
Oh well, I don't
I
know, because I had to turn it off right after it started, because
because the
there
guy
were
came to do your
there
water
were
softener.
people in the room who probably, the opening
Mm.
scene of Her is a little on the racy side.
The nature of the interaction between the human and the cyborg got to be a bit intimate. Yeah, that,
Yeah.
as I remember, that's one of the themes of the movie. Is like,
Yeah.
at
And
what point
that's
does this synthetic become good enough for this dude?
and not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not judging. It's just that I had there's some things you don't want to watch with your children nearby.
Indeed.
Or
Yeah.
you don't want playing on the TV when people from the other room are listening to what's on the TV and going, "What the hell are you watching?" And you're like, "No, it's that movie everyone likes."
Mhm.
Yeah.
See,
So
and you knew that because you're human and you've got
that's
taste and you
right.
have a sense of appropriateness, and that is never going to get. That's never going to go out of style.
Yeah. So, this could be one of those opportunities where you take your own dysfunction and you say, could the robot handle this? So I had uh, a meeting just the other day where one of my product people frustrated me to the point where I may have stepped over the line of out of
Hmm.
the coolness into the less cool side of the room. Um, calm, cool, collected. No one can imagine you getting angry, and then you kind of go off on somebody because they pushed it too far. They were resistant way too beyond a reasonable amount.
This is a human phenomenon.
Yeah, and so in situation like what would your Turing machine do with a resistant listener? It would probably just keep repeating the answer.
That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah,
You could because you could say so. Your audience is somebody who has a fixed idea and some resistance and but imagine as you talk to the person that you're playing a person who has an anger problem, right?
yeah,
And you could see there's a lot of different ways that's the thing about this is there's all these different dimensions that it's observed in the race in the training data, and so you can really like bring any sort of combination of factors to the situation that you want.
yeah, yeah. I probably should qualify. Like I it's not like I went
I'm not
abused
saying you have
anything
an
or
anger
anything.
problem.
Yeah,
I'm just saying it would be
yeah.
funny to do that.
It was the situation that had come up was we were at the tail end of a sprint, and product owner is prepping for what's coming next, and he's shoveling a fair amount of work into the potential next bucket. And I'm looking at
Mm-hmm.
that going, so what makes you feel that that's an appropriate amount of work to go into the next sprint? And he goes, well, based on what they've delivered, what their velocity is. And I'm like, well, if you were to go purely on velocity, you've just shoveled 22 points into the next bucket. Their velocity, their average velocity over the previous three sprints is about 5. So on where things stand right now. So what 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 is a contributing factor to your strong opinion that they're able to pull this off? He goes, well, this sprint isn't over yet. I said, yeah, I know, but in this sprint there's 38 story points, and they've currently finished 11,
Mm.
and there are hours remaining in this sprint. So it's not looking good from that standpoint. And he goes, well, I feel it's going to be fine. I said, well, unfortunately, we try and deal in empiricism here, in which we're trying to take actual data and apply it to the situation. And what we're seeing here is you're trying to apply feeling and hope. And while you know this team and you know or think you know their capabilities, there is no data to back up that assertion. And so, if we were to try and at least honor this, he goes, they're going to finish at least another 11 points. I said, okay, well, let's assume they do. Let's assume they finish another 11 points. That's going to bring their number up to this. We're going to, they're going to, they did another 11. They were hovering around 17 then. And then he goes, and I even think they're going to get to 28 by tomorrow. Like, all right, so let's assume you're right. Assume they get to 28. Their sprints went like this: 7, 0, 28. He goes,
Mm.
right, 28. That's good. That's an improvement. I said, yes, but it's not a single sprint improvement. They didn't get 28 in one sprint. They got 28 in 2 sprints, plus whatever carryover from the one where they only delivered 7. So,
Yeah, it's not exactly a stable trend,
yeah.
right?
So, I
Yeah.
mean, you really should be looking at 12 as your number, assuming your thing is right. 12 is probably closer to realistic. You're putting double that. You're
Yeah.
giving them twice as much stuff. I would advise caution. And he was still being resistant. And then that's when I kind of went a little crazy because he kept going, it's fine. It'll be fine. And I'm like, the only reason and I said, and so fast forward, I raised my voice a little bit, which you really got to start dealing in reality. And then we talked later, and I came at it a little bit more reasonably. And the more reasonable version of the conversation was, it's great that you have this certainty, this internal feeling that things are going to go. I mean, there's a short supply. There's a short supply of people who are able to stay calm in a sea of chaos around here.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can do that is a good thing. But what I need your help to do is to find a way to take that internal feeling that you have and translate that into external data that will reassure the people around you.
How will you demonstrate?
Yeah. How will we do that? How can we do that? So that's where we came to. But it was a near couple of hours.
I wonder if the chatbot can understand and replicate motivated reasoning. I bet it can.
You
right?
think?
The idea that, well, I bet it's one of those dimensions, right? Yeah. Chatbot, create me an argument for something that isn't supported by the data or logic, but you really want to be true, right?
Ooh.
I bet.
I wonder what it would do. You said it's a quick response. Maybe we should ask it.
You can see it coming back. It's like a teletype machine.
Yeah.
Except a lot smarter. Yeah. Oh, and I figured maybe we should end on this, but I just realized probably a way to break it from my days in QA. How would you break the thing? I think we could maybe just ask it, Chatbot, what is the definitive definition of a story point? And you see smoke coming out.
How many hours is a story point?
Yeah. Use definitive logic that will settle the question once and for all.
What is a story point? Yeah. That would probably, be, I mean, I think Captain Kirk could apply that to kill just about every computer in the Star Trek universe. I think that.
I don't get the reference. I really.
You do too.
That was Luke's father, right? I can't.
Stop it.
God. I know. That's what I do. I'm sorry. I apologize. Tedious.
So.
Anyway, should we wrap it?
Yeah.
That means end the show. Okay.
It does mean that. That's a wrap.
Yeah. Well, for Mike Markey
and Matt Beam.
And there's no dancing in software development.
That's Matt Beam. But what about in coaching? I think there's dancing in coaching.
Yeah.
There are times.
Well, context determines appropriateness. So hire a human to figure that out. That's
right. You're not going to see that robot do any dancing. Actually, you might.
You probably will. Boston Dynamics is working on a thing that can outdance you and give you a motivated reason.
We kept talking about the Turing test and all these things that this robot thing is going to do. And the one thing that all these AIs, like my favorite part of any of these AI stories is when the robot decides to just kill off humanity. Like yeah. and it happened way too often. Like there must be.
But those are human stories. Those stories come from humans. I think, why would a human why would a robot want to do that? I don't understand.
Maybe the robot doesn't, but the robot is drawing data from somewhere. It's drawing opinion from somewhere.
It's drawing opinion from humans who absolutely want to kill other humans.
Yeah, why not?
There's the flaw.
And how much fiction is out there in which the AI decides that the solution is to destroy humanity? So why wouldn't an AI learn from our fictionalized AI about proper responses?
So there's the lesson. Be very, very careful what data you use to train this thing, because I learned it from watching you, as that commercial went in the 80s.
That's
say
right.
Say no to drugs for robots.
Could be. It may well be.
Okay. I got to go.
Data.
Let's end it.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Indeed. You as well, Mike Markey. I'm Matt Beam, and now this has been This Agile Thing.
And still will be next time. Bye, folks.